Hi everyone. Uh, so now we'll go for the Aviatrix Edge section. Let me share my screen. I hope everyone can see my screen. So here we go with the Aviatrix Edge. So first, what is Aviatrix Edge? So you have your cloud environment, right? And in this cloud environment, you have multi-cloud environment, you have everything configured, up and running in multi-cloud. But in the cloud environment, your apps are running and all these things. So your application layer and your backbone layer, where you connect to all those multi-cloud, even within a, if it is in one cloud, then across multiple region, and if it is multiple cloud, then all multiple clouds. But normally the users are outside the cloud environment, right? So once then you need to connect your user to use those applications. So your users can be on your edge location, your branch, your data center, or maybe on user, your at home or mobile users, whatnot, right? So all of them need to connect. So Aviatrix Edge is bring that connectivity model, right? So whatever, whatnot your users are, you need to connect to them. And when you connect to your users, to your cloud environment, you want the same look and feel and all these things, which you are already doing in the cloud environment with the Aviatrix solution. And for sure, the security is the concern, right? So for this one, you need end-to-end encryption. Whatever traffic from all of your remote locations up to the cloud need to be encrypted, right? Either it's going over the internet, or later on we'll discuss with some private connectivity options. But what not, like private connectivity just gave you the option to connect to those sites, to cloud environment via some private circuit, which is not going over the internet, but is still, it's not encrypted, right? So if there's a compliance reasons, all these things, like you need to be encrypted. So with the Aviatrix solution, by default, you get end-to-end high-end encryption. And other things you will find with this solution, right? So when you connect via the Aviatrix Edge to all your locations, right? So whatever the feature we have in the Aviatrix software, right? Network segmentation, distributed cloud firewall, other thing, monitoring tool, troubleshooting tools, everything can be extends up to your edge location. So your edge location will looks like an extension of your cloud, right? And it's another VPC or VNet. You can think like, okay, there's another VPC or VNet on your edge locations, and then you can connect to the cloud, and it's same look and feel. One same Terraform provider you can use to manage and configure your devices, and same controller and copilot you use, right? For your management and data plane functions and everything. So everything will be in the same single pane of glass. You can get it. Other thing, I'm not a salesperson here, but normally other deployments where for all these remote and connection and all these things, some customers used SD-WAN type of deployment, right? With SD-WAN deployment, you have like private connect over the private MPLS circuit or over the internet or whatnot, right? And from multiple locations, and then SD-WAN will give you connectivity up to the cloud environment. But once the SD-WAN connect to the cloud environment, then it's done, right? After that, it doesn't know all the other controls in the cloud environment. So if those type of use cases are there, like Aviatrix Edge can replace them, and it's much cheaper than that. So I'm not a salesperson or anything, but you can work with the sales and other team member, and you can find out like Aviatrix Edge solution is much better to use as compared to SD-WAN solution. Okay. So now we go to the next one. Where can be those edge locations? So those edge locations can be the regional data centers, uh, where your server infrastructures are there, your main enterprise data centers, and you still want to keep some of your apps or applications and everything remain there uh, in your data center, but you have other deployment in the cloud. So those application servers, instances, and all these things need the communication over the secure channel towards the cloud, or your user's location, your headquarter, your office, your branch locations, where it need connectivity to the cloud. Or in a third option we are offering is the mid-mile providers like Equinix, right? So where you can host your VNF function there, and from that VNF function, you can have the private connectivity to multiple clouds, right? So all these things, three options we have with the edge locations. So any question or query here? If not, then we'll proceed to the next one. Extend cloud to the edge. So as I mentioned earlier, right, you can have your branch location or data center location, which can connect to the cloud using the Equinix, using the Aviatrix Edge. Other your retail locations, data centers, all these things then can connect. And third option, which is in roadmap, is your mobile and IoT devices also can connect using the Aviatrix Edge to the cloud. What the using the Aviatrix Edge, it is extending your cloud up to the your edge location. As I mentioned earlier, it is treating your branch, data center, other locations as VPC and VNet, right? You have the same control, same look and feel, everything, whatever the control you have using the spoke and transit gateways here in your MCNA, multi-cloud network architecture, right? Using the Aviatrix, you can have the same look and feel on your edge. And the greatest thing is you're using the same infrastructure as code automation, right? You are using the same Terraform provider, using the Aviatrix, and you can deploy everything. You don't need to learn anything new or anything else. So all using the single pane of glass, single manageability, everything. So I have repeated it multiple times. That's the main advantage using the Aviatrix Edge. So now Edge timeline journey. So how that all this Edge was started. So before the controller version 2.4, right? Long back, where we have the requirement from the customers, our own customers, users, like, okay, they need to connect their edge environment, their data centers, their branch offices, and other locations, right? Headquarters, whatnot, to the cloud environment, right? So for that, we offer the site to cloud offering at that time. And with that site to cloud offering, what it is doing, like on your own location, you have your own WAN router, maybe something like with your third party Cisco, Juniper, whatnot, these type of routers, firewall, all. And then from those routers and all, we have the IPsec tunnel to our either to the transit gateway or to the spoke gateway where you need to terminate that. So site to cloud. So we offer the site to cloud connectivity, right? So this is before version 2.4. But with that option, right, it is not the same look and feel you can get on your site, on your edge location. Yeah, you have no same type of controls available which you are already enjoying on your multi-cloud backbone, right? On using the transit gateway and spoke gateways. So that things are not there. So for that one, either after controller version 2.5, we offer a physical device named Cloud9 at that time. So Cloud9 is the physical hardware appliance we ship to the customer with the Aviatrix software running on it. So with that software running, you can have now high performance encryption (HPE), right, with the Cloud9 device up to the Aviatrix Transit Gateway and other features, right? Aviatrix other control and features are available in Cloud9. That's the option. But again, with this option, the limitation is we need to ship the hardware appliance and all these things. And other than that, there's no option, right? You can use your third-party routers, etc. So if customer don't want to get the hardware appliance, so then after version 6.8, right, on the control version, we offer third option now, like a more mature option. Now with this option, which is called Aviatrix Edge, so which is more mature. Now you can have you are running in your environment either VMware EXI or your Linux KVM or whatnot. You can run our software on top of it as a virtual software, right? Virtual version. So virtual form factor is available. So you don't need the hardware device anymore. So you can run on your own environment if you can, and run as a spoke gateway. You just need to download our software, run it as a spin up as a VM, and then attach the zero touch provisioning file on it, and then you're good to go, right? So simplified edge workflows. So same thing, everything available. We went through earlier for the what Aviatrix Edge, what benefits using the Aviatrix Edge. So I'm not going to repeat that. But the main thing is here with version 6.8 plus, we call it Aviatrix Edge, and there's a virtual form factors available for you to deploy in your own environment, right? In addition of that, right, the customer requirements are coming and all these things, right? Like they have the presence in third-party providers, right? Where Equinix mid-mile providers, right? Where they have the connectivity to private connectivity to multiple cloud providers, etc. So all these things. And Equinix has their feature or service which is called Network Edge, where you can launch your VNF there, right? Virtual network function and connect to it. And it's automated all these things. So yes, with this, we have option to deploy Equinix at Equinix Network Edge, our Aviatrix Edge solution as one of the VNF there. And also you can use our Aviatrix Edge in Equinix Metal Network, right? So Metal Network is kind of a bare metal, you got it, whole machine, you got it in Equinix. And if you got it, then you can run a VM on that bare metal, Equinix Metal, and then connect to all the cloud providers and other locations, right? So all these options are available after version 6.8 plus. And in addition of that, still, if you prefer, like we are still shipping the hardware device. So now it is called Aviatrix Edge hardware, platform Edge hardware device. So with that Aviatrix platform Edge, we are still shipping, and there's multiple. The differences here, like now it's a multiple form factor available, right? So there is small, medium, and large form factor available with our hardware form factor, and same with virtual form factor as well, right? With the virtual form factors here, when you spin up your VM, you can select the vCPUs, like how many vCPUs you want to use, how many memory you want to, how much memory you want to use, and based on that, you can have different t-shirt sizes available. And same thing on Equinix Network Edge. When you launch the Aviatrix Edge platform, you can choose like which how powerful VM you want to launch, and based on that, it will provide that connectivity to you. Okay, so in this slide, we are showing that Aviatrix Edge, both virtual form factor and hardware form factors, right? So I guess by now you know that like with the Aviatrix Edge is act as a spoke gateway in your edge environment, right? So secure cloud networking is already provided that. So virtual form factor I have mentioned earlier, right? So either you can launch it the virtual form factor in the Equinix marketplace, right? Or you can use your own EXXI or KVM, uh, and then you can launch the VM of different sizes. So we have the different size of VM available, whatever you want to launch, and the throughput and performance you can get up to the 10 gig using the virtual form factors, right? Both in your own environment, if you're running in your own environment, or within the Equinix environment, right, in the network edge. Then we have hardware form factors. So for branch and remote sites, we have a hardware device, we call it FWA1012, right? So this hardware device, we'll go the details of this hardware device in the next slides. But this is mostly for the remote side, and the throughput and performance you can get is maximum 1 gig or more, right? But this is for small sites. If you have the requirement for enterprise, DC, and other colo locations, and maybe your headquarter or something, right, require the connectivity and performance with the higher bandwidth, so up to 10 to 25 gig type of performance, we are shipping it with the purpose built like this Dell hardware with the with the Aviatrix software installed on it. So with the Aviatrix Edge, everything hypervisor and Aviatrix Edge is running. We manage it, we may control it, and you just need to get it there on your, it will be shipped in your environment, and you just need to plug in, and then it will be registered, and then you can start using it. So we'll go through the detail of that on next slides, but this is the hardware form factors are available. And then there's, with either you are using the virtual form factor or hardware form factor, you're a single Terraform provider, right? Whenever you once you launch it, configure it, so all the configuration, everything you can do via the Terraform, and same Terraform provider, you can use Aviatrix Terraform provider, right? So here I want to go some of the details of the virtual form factors. So I put the link here. So you can see that this is the virtual form factor, and then you can have multiple t-shirt sizes available, right? If you are using a small t-shirt size, then the VM you are launching, it needs to be a minimum two vCPUs with 4 GB of memory, right? And storage requirement for all of these cases, whatever the t-shirt size you are going to use, 64 gig. With the small t-shirt size, you can go get the performance up to 1 gigabit per second, right? And then we have other t-shirt sizes available, medium, large, extra large, right? And then you can see that when all of these t-shirt sizes, the number of vCPUs is increasing, and same thing, the memory, right? And based on that, you can get the good performance using those form factors. So here we are showing the same thing again, right, with other further details on it. So as I mentioned earlier, right, like you can either deploy the Aviatrix Edge on your own environment, right, in the virtual form factor. So if you're deploying in your own environment using the virtual form factor, so you need to use x86 hardware, right? So your hardware is your own customer manage. You manage it, your hardware, and the hypervisor you're running, right? So whatever the hypervisor, the VMware or KVM you're running, it's your own customer managed hypervisor. And top of that, you can launch the Aviatrix Edge software, right, as a VM. So that you are launching it here. And based on this, both of this and this, right? Uh, because you're running your hypervisor and all, so the control you are running somewhere else. So vCenter, in case of VMware, you are running in somewhere else, and that is also customer managed, right? And in case of KVM, then maybe you're using the OpenStack or anything, then that's you are managing it. And these type of environment, you have your environment, and on those environment you can run the Aviatrix Edge software, right, in a virtual form factor. Or if you don't want to go to this route altogether, right, you don't want to manage that your anything, so you can still order our hardware. So in this case, the hardware we ship to you, right? So if Aviatrix recommended hardware, it is we ship to you, we manage it, and the OS and everything we manage it. And same thing like software, you are just configuring and managing it. That portion of it. Other than that, the OS and hardware is managed by Aviatrix. Right? So this is the option. These options are available. And third option is absolutely like mid-mile provider like Equinix. We'll go through the details on other slides for that. So I guess it's clear for you. Now we'll proceed to next one. Okay, so now we'll go to the technical details of it. Right? So you have the overview of Aviatrix Edge. What is that, right? Which location you can deploy it, which type of form factors available, all these details you have. Now we'll go to the details of what are the technical details on. So once you launch your Aviatrix Edge, right? So in this, you have three interfaces on it. So the first interface, we call it WAN interface, right? Which is normally Ether 0 always. So this WAN interface connects to the underlay, which is providing connectivity to cloud, right? So cloud underlay. And that cloud underlay can be over the internet. So underlay can be internet or private circuit. Both can be possible. We'll go to the detail of it, but this is the WAN interface, which is going towards the cloud, right? Then there's always an Ether1 interface. So ETH1, which is a LAN interface, which connects to your LAN environment, whatever your edge environment is there, where your own environment, your LAN switches, router, firewall, whatever virtual devices, wherever we need to connect. So LAN interface connect to your LAN environment. And then we have a management interface. So management interface will connect our Aviatrix Edge software or VM to our controller. So Aviatrix controller and Copilot and all these things, connectivity, management, control, all is via the management interface, which is a separate, it is always Ether2 interface, right? And on top of that, these are the physical type of interfaces, right? So after the physical interfaces, now you connect to your cloud environment. So once you connect to your cloud environment, you need to run the overlay tunnel on it. So that overlay tunnel is going over the WAN underlay. So over the Ether0 interface. So over the Ether0 interface, you are connecting the overlay tunnel to multiple transit gateways. So with Aviatrix, we have mentioned earlier, right? Like Edge is acting as a spoke gateway. It's not entirely true. So it is kind of a spoke gateway, but it's more than a spoke gateway. It's not a traditional spoke gateway, right? More than a spoke. Normally, when you deploy your spoke gateway in any cloud environments, right? It connect to one of the transit gateway, one set of transit gateway. That's it, right? But with Aviatrix Edge, it can bring and it connects to the multiple transit gateways. So it can connect to the transit gateway in AWS, it can connect to the transit gateway for Azure, it can connect to a transit gateway of GCP, Oracle, whatnot, right? Multiple transit gateways it can connect, because from your edge environment, you need the connectivity to all of your multiple cloud providers, right? So, so multiple cloud provider connectivity, yes, we can go of one of the transit gateway and then from there the route the traffic. It's not that efficient way of doing it from your edge locations, and especially if you have private circuits available, right? So if you have private circuit from Azure and you have private circuit from AWS and you want to connect your Aviatrix edge, yes, you can do that. So we'll go through all these details later on further slides. It's just the preview. So basically, here you want to understand like there are three main interfaces: Ether 0, which is always the WAN interface; Ether 1, which is always the LAN interface; and Ether 2, which is always the management interface to provide the connectivity to Aviatrix controller and Copilot, right? And on top of that, then there's the tunnel interfaces, which is overlay tunnel, which is going over the WAN interface. That's all you need to understand from now here, and we'll go further. Okay, so now, as I mentioned earlier, right, we go to more details on what ports and protocols we are using, right, using our edge gateway. So here we are showing that edge gateway is deployed, right? And as I mentioned earlier, three interfaces: Ether 0, WAN interface, you can see it here; Ether 1, LAN interface, which is connecting to your edge environment, LAN router; and Ether 2 management interface. So Ether 1 is pretty clear, connect to your LAN environment or your data traffic, everything is coming via this Ether 1 interface up to the gateway, right? Now, with Ether 0 interface, right? WAN interface, this is the underlayer. So this Ether 0 interface is always connect to your WAN router. So wherever your WAN router is there, it connects to your WAN router. And it has the default route pointing towards the WAN router. That's all it is doing. And then WAN router has underlay connectivity to transit gateways, right? In multiple cloud environments. So either that WAN router have the private connectivity, if you're using the private circuit, right, up to your edge environment, like AWS Direct Connect, Azure Express Route, Oracle Fast Connect, yeah, right, whatever, GCP Connect. So all these things, private circuits, if you're using either the private circuit, or if you're not using the private circuit, then in that case, this is the public internet you are using, and over the public internet you are connecting to the transit gateway public IP, right? And on top of that, we are running overlay tunnel, right? IPsec tunnels. So what IPsec is using? IPsec is using UDP port 500 and UDP port 4500. So that need to be one, right? So that ports over those port overlay tunnel connect to the secure over the private circuit. In case of the public internet, yes, both those protocol and port number we need, right? UDP port 500 and UDP port 4500 over that IPsec tunnel is gonna, and because we need to get the egress IP, right? Because maybe the Ether 0 interface is using the private IP and you're doing some sort of netting here or whatnot. What can be there? We need to detect the egress IP. So in this, we are using one more TCP port 443 to detect that. This is our own implementation. Using that, we can detect the this edge gateway public IP address, right? So that's what we are doing on over the Ether 0 interface. Ether 1 is pretty much clear, like it's for the LAN. And what is Ether 2? So with Ether 2, which is the management interface, with this management interface, we connect to controller and copilot, right? So this Ether 2 management interface, normally, like everywhere, like customer deploy, they have their own firewall or anything where from where you can access that management interface. And with that firewall, you need to allow that TCP port 443 over the controller IP, right? So because edge gateway need to communicate with the controller using TCP port 443, controller FQDN or IP address, you need to allow that. And same thing for Copilot. For Copilot, uh, we are sending all the syslog and netflow data, right? So syslog is using UDP port 5000. So using UDP port 5000, it is going to the Copilot, all the syslog information of the edge gateway. So and for flow IQ and thread IQ and all these things, all these details, we are exporting our net flow data, right? For that net flow data is using UDP port 31283. So that need to be open for the Copilot, right? And in addition, because we are using the Copilot FQDN name or controller FQDN name, we also need the UDP port 53, which is open to your DNS server, right? So we communicate with your DNS server to resolve our controller and Copilot FQDN names. So that's all in here. And once the edge gateway registered with the controller, right? So controller adds the edge gateway WAN IP, which is the Ether 0 IP to transit gateway security group, right? So now the transit gateway allow that UDP port 500 and 4500 communication uh, 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 with the edge gateway, right? That this can bring the security group implementation. And same thing on controller allow its own security group, the Ether2 management IP, so that it can communicate with the controller, right? So these are the protocol and port detail, and you know that all is using the three interfaces: Ether 0, Ether 2, and Ether 1. I guess it's clear to you up to now. If you have any query, question, let me know. We can go further detail on it. Otherwise, we'll proceed. Okay, so now we go through the edge hardware details. So the hardware we are shipping, if you are not going to manage your own virtual form factor, right? And then no worries, we can ship you the hardware and you can deploy that hardware as a edge solution, right? So for that, we have two versions available, two form factors. One is FWA 1012BC, and you can notice that there's the interface is available on that, right? Either it's a 2x SFP for fiber connectivity or RJ45 type of one. So one connectivity we can provide using this branch and remote site, right? And then if you have a requirement for high throughput and high performance, then for enterprise DC and colo side, right? There's the option using the Dell hardware. So we are going to ship Dell hardware already pre-provisions with Aviatrix Edge hypervisor and VM on all not in it. And you can go through the detail of that, right? Like what type of device we are using it with all the details on it. And it has 1025 gig NIC interfaces. And same thing, we'll use either you use the virtual form factor, this Aviatrix lower model 10121C or Dell, right? We are going to use three interfaces, Ether 0, Ether 1, Ether 2 to connecting. So all the details I have already went through, but these are the hardware form factors available for your deployment in different locations. Okay, so you already launched your Aviatrix Edge on your location. Here we are showing the more detail on it, how it is going to connect to the transit gateway, right? So your Aviatrix Edge always connect to one of your transit gateway in your cloud environment, cloud deployment. So it can connect to the transit gateway, as I mentioned earlier, right? Over the private circuit or over the internet. So first we are showing the private circuit. So you see that three interfaces, Ether 0, Ether 1, Ether 2. Ether 1 connected to your LAN environment, right? Ether 0, where you connect to your WAN router. So by default, we always put a default route using the Ether 0 towards your WAN router, and then your WAN router has the private circuit, right? So it's in case of private connectivity, that's interlaced there. And with that private circuit, all we need to get the our transit gateway private IP, right? That reachability. We have our transit gateway private IP and we have our own private IP. That reachability is done over the private circuit. That route is available, that connectivity is available over that private circuit using your own WAN router. Then we'll bring up that overlay IPsec tunnels on top of it, right? And that overlay IPsec tunnels, you have the option to enable the high performance encryption, HPE on all. So it depends on you, like you want that, you can enable that, right? And other features all will be there. We'll go through all those details later on, right? And with the Ether 2, right? Ether 2 interface also has the default route, and with that default route is going towards to to your firewall or router, right, where you are allowing that. And with that, we have the connectivity to Aviatrix controller and Copilot. I already went through the detail earlier, right, for what controller and Copilot connectivity we need. So that here we are showing over the internet, but there's also option for that management interface connectivity towards the controller and Copilot using the private circuit, right? If you have a compliance reason or anything and you want to do that over the private connectivity, yes, we support both. So either over the internet or over the private circuit. Same thing over the data connectivity, data path. So this is control path, data path also. So data path can be over the private circuit or over the internet. So here we show the private circuit. Now I'll go the detail of the over the internet. Exactly the same, whatever whatnot we have there over the private. Just the WAN router have the internet connectivity, and with that internet connectivity, it has the go up to the internet gateway in your. So we are showing the AWS type of deployment, right? It is going to internet gateway here, and from there internet gateway, the public IP of transit gateway, right? So we just need the communication up to the public IP of the transit gateway and public IP of this Ether 0 interface, right? Once that communication is done, then on top of that, we will bring the overlay IPsec tunnels, right? So that's all for this, how we are doing the transit attachment. So earlier I showed that transit attachment using the single gateway, right? But if customer need the redundancy, all these things, right? So, there's scenarios where your single gateway can be done either in a hardware form factor or virtual factor form factor, whatever, whatnot, right? If you need a high availability on these things, you can deploy a edge in the redundant fashion. So here we are showing that option, right? In your environment, you deploy your edge in redundant fashion in two Aviatrix edge devices, and uh, from both, everything is same, right? First option, we are showing it over the private circuit. From both, default route pointing to your WAN router. WAN router have the private circuit, private connectivity to transit gateway, and same thing, right? And this you can run either in active or active standby mode, right? Whatever you want to choose, you can run it on this type of deployment. And for management connectivity, control connectivity, same thing. From both Aviatrix Edge, it is going to the default route towards your firewall or router, which is provide the connectivity towards the controller and Copilot. Here in this, we are showing the our edge redundancy, right? But this is not the full redundant circuit, right? You are, we are showing with a single WAN router, but if you have the whole redundancy, even your own environment, you have multiple WAN router, which is typically customers do. Depends on your site, what how much big and large site is. So if for that you have WAN router redundancy and you have LAN router redundancy. Good. So same thing in our Aviatrix Edge. One of the device connect to the first set of the WAN and LAN router. Other device will connect to other set of WAN and LAN router, right? And both WAN router have their own private circuit, right? Towards the cloud service provider CSPs. So it can have the one or multiple private circuits. So all these private circuit connectivity is coming to this WAN router. So from multiple cloud provider, and then we have overlay tunnels over that. So one of the private circuit is used that underlay to connect to that CSP. For others, private connectivity is using this different underlay from using your WAN router, right? So this is the full redundant deployment option. Okay, so now what we are showing here. So transitive routing, as I mentioned earlier, right? Edge is acting as a spoke gateway, but it is not exactly a spoke gateway. It is more than a spoke gateway, right? So we have the features available for transit routing. So that those feature detail will go here. So your edge environment, and it has the private circuits connectivity to here we are showing in this slide, right? Two private circuit to two CSPs, one towards the AWS using the direct connect to your WAN router, and using the express route to your Azure environment. So from your own LAN environment, you can connect to both of your cloud providers. Great, everything fine, right? And then we have the communication between those provider, right? Like from AWS to Azure and vice versa. So if you have the legal compliance, another reason or whatnot, right? Whatever your scenario is, you don't want that traffic normally to go over the internet. So with our MCNA solution, right, you can go traffic over the internet using MCNA backbone, right? To connectivity and all high performance encryption, everything is enabled, right? But for some reason, you don't want to go through that internet path, and you want that traffic to go over the private circuit, right? Always from one cloud provider to go to other cloud provider over the private circuit. Okay, so in that case, you have that private connectivity available, right? From your AWS up to your edge gateway, and from your edge gateway to Azure, right? So this is the private connectivity over the private circuit available. So what you need to do, you just need to enable the multi-tier transit on this Aviatrix Edge. Once you enable that, right, we can route the traffic from your AWS to Azure over these private circuits, right? And then you have optional of the transit peering between your gateways, transit gateways in AWS and Azure environment over the internet, right? Yes, that is can be still available, and you can use as a backup path. And for that, we'll do the AS path prevent, right, over this backup path. So always, if the path over the private circuit available, it will always use that private circuit part from one CSP to another CSP. If for some reason that private circuit is down, not available, nothing is there, then yes, in that case, the traffic will go from AWS to Azure or vice versa over the backup path. And same thing, like one of these private circuit is down, right? And then we need to send the traffic over there. So for example, I can imagine for this case, okay, so this is down, right? This is down. This is not available. This is not available. This is down. So, okay, for this case, this is working. backup path between AWS and Azure. Everything is working. What will from the your own edge location? So your edge location, your Azure is working fine, right? Your Azure. And because this is down, that's why these tunnel will go down. Okay, no problem. Traffic will route for AWS from your edge gateway up to the AWS, Azure Transit, and from Azure Transit to AWS Transit, right? So one of the private circuit down, you can go through like that, right? This is the option you have available. And then on your WAN router, you have other option, like if even that tunnel is down, their private connectivity is not possible here. You can, if your WAN router have internet connectivity, maybe you can use the internet over here to connect to AWS environment. So all these type of possibility and everything is available to you. Depends how you want to deploy that. Here we are showing that typical deployment environments, sometimes customer have separate WAN router and LAN routers. Yes, if you have that, right? And that is all control over there, your environment, like all the routing, you're controlling it here over WAN environment. So if you have a separate WAN and router, LAN router, Ether 0 connect to your WAN router, Ether 1 connect to your LAN router. And with your WAN router, you have either private connectivity or over the internet toward the transit gateways. And LAN environment with the LAN router, you have the LAN connectivity, right? Or maybe in some deployment, you have the single router which is doing the both function, right? WAN plus LAN function. Okay. Right? We'll just connect our both Ether 0 and Ether 1 interface to the same router, and based on that, Ether 0 will have the default route user the Ether 0 towards the WAN router, and then once the traffic reach to WAN router, router can route that traffic towards there. And same thing for with Ether 1, it is providing the LAN connectivity. So these two deployment models are there based on your own deployment architecture, right? Okay, so here we are going to the detail of how the hardware version of that Aviatrix Edge. If you order that hardware version, right, how you're going to onboard, operate, and manage that. So it's very simple process. So for that, you order the hardware device. It comes with the pre-stage with OS, everything on it, right? So you don't need to do anything. You just need to bring that hardware device and connect with the management network. So management connectivity, right? Ether 2 connectivity you need to do for that one. Plug into your network. So, and then you need to go on the Aviatrix Copilot, right? And you need to onboard the device. So you will name your device. You say that, okay, Edge platform, what type of hardware configuration you got is either Dell server or FW1012. I mentioned that is both like a small version, small form factor or large form factor, right? Based on that, you select your form factor here, and then you just put your CL number on it, right? Whatever the CL number of the device, you insert that CL number, and that's it. And it will register itself with the over the management network, management connectivity to controller and copilot, right? And then you connect your LAN and WAN interfaces and attach it to the transit gateway. So that's all you need to do. And connect with your LAN environment, right? All these things you need to do. Here if you're using the hardware version of Aviatrix Edge. Okay, so that's the hardware platform. Now we go for the virtual form factor, right? So in virtual form factors, I deliberately didn't put any slide because I want to show it to you like live type of demo type of environment for this one. Like it will be more easier to understand. So you go in your Copilot, right? And Copilot under the cloud fabric, there's Edge. and then you do that plus edge gateway. So first thing for your virtual form factor, you need to define your zero touch provisioning file, right? In hardware form factor, we did everything for you, right? You just need to put your serial number and then, but here, so you just put your X name, H, HQ, something like that, right? You select your platform, you put your some site ID, and this is the ZTP file version, right? So that ZTP file type depends, right? If you are using VMware, EXI VMware, then you're using the ISO file type. But if you're using KVM, then you'll use the Cloud Initiate, right? So that based on that, whatever the environment you're using, right? And then I mentioned right earlier, right? There's three interfaces: Ether 0, which is WAN interface; Ether 1, which is LAN interface; and Ether 2, which is management interface, right? So these three interfaces are there. So for Ether 0 WAN interface, you just put your IP address and default gateway, right? For this one. Yeah. LAN interface also. So WAN interface, you put your tag if you want to tag your WAN interface, whatever it's optional, and your IP address and default interface, default gateway. For LAN interface, right? You need to do same thing, your IP address, default gateway, or if you want to do the interface tag on it, right? And also, we'll go later on the detail of this. On the LAN interface, there is option of the running BRRP and with VLAN mode, right? So if you're running VRRP, then you can do the enable VRRP on it, and yeah, and enable that, right? But right now I'm putting it off. And then management interface. So over the management interface, there's an option to do the IP assignment using the DSCP, or you can do the static I. So if you are doing static IP address, then you need to put IP address, default gateway, and both the primary and secondary DNS server. So remember, over the management interface, we need to connect to the controller, Copilot, all these things. And normally the controller Copilot names are FQDN names and all. So we need the DNS connectivity, right? So if we are getting these information from DSCP, fine. If not, if you're putting it statically, then you need to provide the primary DNS number, secondary DNS number, right? And uh, there's an option to do it over the private network, right? So as I mentioned earlier, like normally a Ether 2, it's going over the internet, but if you have the private connectivity, yes, you can enable that private network. Then we'll connect to the controller and Copilot over the private IP, right? That's the option you have. And then you save it and it will download the file for you. So I'm just going to show you this thing. So that is the first step you do. You create your ISO file, right? Then you go on the Aviatrix support.aviatrix, right? And here's the download section on it. So on the download section, you are doing, okay, where you are going to image download. I'm selecting US. And then you have the option, like for which version of Aviatrix controller you're running. So if you're running 6.8, 6.9, or 7.0, you can have the option to download either the EXI image or KVM image, right? So both. And if you're running the version 7.1, right? So you can download the image, and you download the image. Second thing you download, and then you spin up your VM in your environment with that downloaded image, right? Once the VM is spin up, you attach your ISO file on it. So with your ISO file have all the detail. Like earlier we defined that WAN interface, LAN interface, all these IPs, and so it will go and configure that. And once that it has that IP address and all these things, it will go and try to register itself with the controller, because from your own controller copilot, right? You create that ISO file, so it knows that controller copilot FQDN name and all these things. From there, it go and connect it. So this is if you are using your own environment, right? Okay, so if you are in deploying your edge gateway in a large environment, right, like a headquarter or enterprise DC or other location where you have the multiple environment, right, on your LAN side. So in your LAN side, you have multiple environment. You have production server, test servers, whatnot, or some departments, or based on that, you have done some segmentation across them. You can use on our side on Aviatrix LAN type, you can enable the VRRP, right? And with VRRP, there's option to configure the LAN interface with multiple LAN, multiple .vq, .1q type of VLAN environment, right? And this thing we support up to the VLAN number 2 to 4092. And we can run VRRP if you are running in active standby mode. All right. If you have redundant fashion, you have deployed your Aviatrix Edge in the redundant high availability, then yes, you can run the VRRP. And with the VRRP, we always be running in active standby mode. So here we are showing that, okay, and our LAN port is kind of a trunk port, right? So which is connecting to your primary switch or where it is giving you option to do the .1q trunking. So here we are showing VLAN 100. It is using 192.168.1.1 as a default gateway type of IP address or VRRP. Active WEP. So WEP IP is 192.168.1.1, right? And the primary IP is 1.2 and standby is 1.3. Same thing for VLAN 200, 172.31.1.1 is the WEP IP, primary IP is 1.2, standby is 1.3, and you can have multiple VLANs. All these things you can have, and you can connectivity. So good thing with that, right? Later on, we'll go to the detail of that. You can put these each separate VLAN in a separate network segment, right? So this is your one environment which need to particular connectivity to cloud environment, so particular network segment or whatnot, right? So you can do it using that VLAN tag, and on top of VLAN tag, you have to do the network segmentation, right? So that we allow, or we'll go to the detail of that, but that's what we can do on the LAN side. So what I meant with that, if you go on your, like when you're creating your zero touch provisioning file, right? At that time, you can go whatever you select, right? And I'm just showing you the LAN interface. So, and the LAN interface, once you can have multiple VLAN interfaces, right? You can enable VLAN 1, VLAN 2, like whatever the VLAN ID, you can add VLAN interface. So under the LAN interface, you can see that there's option to plus VLAN interface, and you can create additional VLAN interfaces. You have option to run the VRRP or not. If you want to enable the VRRP, you can enable the VRRP if you have the redundancy available, right? Two edge gateways. So yes, you can enable VRRP if you have only one edge gateway. So you are not running VRRP. Just you can just add the VLAN interfaces, right? As I mentioned earlier, for VRRP, we are not running in an active mode. We are always in active standby mode. And I briefly go through earlier, right? Yeah, with that, what's with that VLAN is giving you, right? With this VLAN, you can put these VLAN in separate network segments. So you can have attach the VLAN to VLAN segment. So VLAN segment you can match with the network segment. So for example, here we are showing the server VLAN. Server VLAN we put it in a red segment, and then in the cloud environment you have a red segment. So only those servers can communicate those red network segment, unless you have connection policy, right? I'm not going through the detail of all our mm, network segmentation, all things, but network segmentation is kind of a macro broad level segmentation which is available to you to use. And here we are showing is a workstation VLAN and workstation VLAN, and they if there is some type of this light blue color of network segment there in the cloud environment, yes. Otherwise, they cannot communicate with each other, or you can have the connection policy on it, right? So based on that, you can extending your whatever the network segmentation here in your edge environment, right? So that's why all the benefits and everything you are getting it with your environment in spoke and transit gateways, right? So all these things can be available here using the Aviatrix edge solution, right? So this is one of the you have other things like high performance encryption, distributed firewall, all other things, network troubleshooting tools, everything you have you are exposed to here using the Aviatrix solution in your cloud environment. You can extend that same feature and functionality in your edge environment. So another thing is the distributed firewall feature, right? So distributed firewall feature available on all our spoke and transit gateways, where you can allow the rules and data, and that rules and everything we are doing based on the smart groups. So I'm not going to the distributed firewall lecture here, but if you know the details of that, otherwise if you have any query and we can go some of details here. But based on that smart group, right, you create the central intent policy in one place in Copilot, right? And you define your rules, and based on that, where they can communicate, right? So as in this type of LAN type environment, so normally in the smart group, there are three things. Based on that, we are creating the smart group, right? Like CSP tags, like CSP tag value pair, like key and value pair, which is not available in your LAN environment because there's no key value whatever, right? It's not a cloud environment where you launch that. So what is the other thing? So based on the CIDR, right? So whatever the IP address range you are using on your LAN environment, you can define that, okay, these IP addresses, for example, we showing you one of rule here that, okay, LAN server, which is source IP addresses. So the source IP addresses of LAN server is this, and they can access to DB server, right? And that type of rule we can define, and it applied on the edge gateway close to the source, right? So whenever the traffic comes, it's okay. If it is passing that rule, then traffic will allow. Otherwise, traffic will drop, right? Based on that, you allow the protocol on all these things. So distributed firewall features is available. It extended up to your edge gateway. Okay, so far in edge, we go through the two type of deployment scenarios, right? Either you are managing it yourself, you are doing it the hardware and hypervisor, either it's the VMware or KVM, you are managing, and based on that you are launching your Aviatrix Edge. Or if you don't want to do that on your own environments, your own locations and everything, you are using Aviatrix Edge hardware platform, right? Which we ship to you. In that case, hardware and hypervisor and software is managed by us, and you are just doing the configuration on top of it, right? There's third option. whereas the mid-mile providers are there, right? Again, it is kind of similar to like hardware type of option, right? But you are deploying it third-party colos location, right? Like Equinix Network Edge, where hardware doesn't owned by you, right? And hypervisor doesn't owned by you, but you can launch your Aviatrix Edge, and you can connect to either over the private connectivity or over the public internet connectivity to your transit gateways, right? All these connectivities over. So in that third option is Aviatrix Edge on Network Edge, right? And everything is available. High performance encryption, multi-cloud connectivity, all these things, transit routing, distributed firewalling, everything, what not is there available, right? But there's something more is available with Aviatrix Edge deployment in Equinix Network Edge. We'll go through the detail of that. So here, what is Aviatrix Edge on Network Edge? So Equinix has a like service called Network Edge, right? And with Equinix, what is happening, right? Like they are cloud adjacent, right? Like mostly all the major cloud provider POP locations and all these things, right? Is there in on various Equinix sites, right? So they have global connectivity, global options, multiple locations. You have that all POPs. So if you have Azure, AWS, whatnot, right? Like if you're doing the private connectivity on that, like they are adjacent to the cloud provider, right? So if your private circuit, the latency will be very low because the adjacent POP cloud service providers and all these things are available. And then you can launch your virtual network function there, right? And with that virtual network function, you can have like uh, with Aviatrix Edge, you can do the high performance encryption. Everything is available, right? And mostly that's main reason. Like normally, why any customer is using the network edge to do that? Like they don't want to go over. Yeah. Okay. Really sorry for interruption. Okay, so where were we? Okay, Aviatrix Edge on Network Edge. So I have already gone through what's the Network Edge, right? And why customer deploy there for close connectivity, for multi cloud connectivity over the private circuit in the using Equinix Network Edge, and we can launch Aviatrix Edge there, right? So Aviatrix Edge launched on the Network Edge marketplace, right? You need to go on the Network Edge marketplace. You need to launch the Aviatrix Edge from there, and then you connect it to the Aviatrix Transit Gateway in the cloud, right? And same thing, once you launch the Network Edge, Aviatrix Edge there, you need to attach the zero touch provisioning file as a day zero file on it. So you need to create that file and then attach it as a day zero file. On the Network Edge, it will give you option to attach your day zero file. You attach that there. Okay, so here we are showing Aviatrix Edge on Network Edge Marketplace. So you go to the Equinix Network Edge Marketplace, you add the new Edge device, right? You select the new Edge device and you select the Aviatrix. Once you select the Aviatrix, you uh, launch it. And as I mentioned earlier, you attach your day zero file on it. And once that Aviatrix Edge is launched, you can connect it to your multi-cloud environment, right? Over the underlay provided via Equinix Fabric and your private connectivity, right? So you still need to buy your own private connectivity across your multiple cloud provider, depends on your using the Equinix platform. That private connectivity underlay is there, and then you can connect to multiple cloud provider. The advantage using the so one can ask, okay, in network edge, why I need to launch a Aviatrix edge? I can launch something else like Cisco CSR or anything else, and it is going to do the same thing for me. Like it can provide the multiple cloud connectivity. Yes, it can do, but there are differences. You connect to the native transit like cloud provider like TGW and all these things. There are route limitations, all these things there. You don't have high performance encryption over these type of things. Like if you're running the IPsec tunnel out there, it is limited to single tunnel, and with low throughput type of performance. You get with Aviatrix Edge, you can get high performance and all other Aviatrix Edge benefit we talked earlier, right? I don't want to go and repeat that, but with that, these are the advantages there. Okay, so here we go to workflow, like how you deploy Aviatrix Edge on Equinix Network Edge, right? So first step, you go. So before launching the Aviatrix Edge on the Equinix Network Edge, first you need to create your ZTP file, right? So you go in the Aviatrix Copilot and create the ZTP file. I showed you earlier, right? I displayed it earlier using that. So, and you need to select the cloud initiate file, right? Because in Equinix Network Edge, they are using KVM. So with the KVM, the ZTP file is type is cloud initiate. So you create your cloud initiate file, you download it, right? And then when you download the cloud initiate, by default, it is there. You just need to make sure that for day zero file in Equinix, the management IP address and subnet mask, you don't need to define that because Equinix dynamically allocate that management Ether2 interface is IP address and network address, and for that we are using variable, right? Slash IP address, something like type of variable in the cloud initiate file and with the subnet mask. So that detail you will find it in the documentation also. Plus, once you download that, by default, it has those variables defined, right? So for management IP address uh, on, and subnet mask, it's a variable. So you don't define the IP addresses there. So you download that file, keep it with you, and then after that, you launch the Aviatrix Edge on the Equinix platform. So you launch that, and then when you're launching, during the land launch, it will ask you for the day zero file. You attach your modified cloud initiate text file as a day zero file. So that step you do it, right? As a day zero file, you attach it, you're done. And then Equinix is asking for your inbound ACL for controller, right? Like all that for the management interface, right? What type of IP addresses will be allowed to communicate over the menu? It is when you're launching your uh, Aviatrix Edge using Equinix platform, right? So you create your inbound ACL, you put uh, your controller IP address and Copilot IP addresses there so that they can communicate with your Aviatrix Edge. And once that Edge is launched, right? Edge is launched completely, right? Then on the Equinix platform, you go and check what's the management IP address is assigned to it, right? So you know the management public IP. You get that management public IP, and then you go back on the Copilot and update that management IP on the Copilot. Okay, this is your my Aviatrix Edge management IP. That's all you need to do. Update the management egress IP on the Copilot. Here we're showing controller, but now it's you can do it over the Copilot. And then your edge is registered with the controller, everything is there. And after that, you can connect to your underlay to multiple cloud service providers, right? Attached to the transit. That's all you need to do. And you have that connectivity option available to you. Okay, so what is new with Equinix, which we don't have in other deployment, like your self-managed deployment, or once you are deploying the hardware platform we are shipping to you, right? So the differences is that with Equinix Network Edge, you don't need, you don't really need, if you want to use it, that's your choice, but you don't really need a WAN router, right? So see, your underlay is directly can connect over the private circuit to cloud providers, right? So the WAN router requirement is not there. You don't really need a WAN router. And because you really don't need the WAN router, right? Then we need multiple WAN interfaces if we need to connect to multiple CSPs, right? If we are connecting to one CSP, that's okay. That's good. We are connecting to only one of the CSPs, for example, AWS, right? Okay, so what's the WAN interface we have? Ether 0. Remember, right? Earlier we have talked so many times earlier before that we have three interfaces: Ether 0 as a WAN interface, Ether 1 as LAN interface, and Ether 2 as management interface. So we have only one WAN interface, one LAN interface, one management interface. But one WAN interface we already used to for private connectivity to AWS. Now we need the private connectivity to Azure, GCP, Oracle, right? So how we can do that? So in the Equinix case, right, in the network edge, because there's no requirement of the WAN router, we have multi-WAN interfaces. We can have multiple WAN interfaces. We can launch it here. So up to 8 WAN interfaces can be launched, right? So if you try to add WAN interfaces, it allows you up to 8 WAN interfaces. But our recommendation is go maximum with 4 for now, right? So, that is well tested. Everything is well documented, tested, everything. So go with the recommended approach up to the 4 WAN interfaces. And if you have a requirement for more than 4, then yes, you can use the external WAN router. And then you have the single LAN route interface and single management interface. So what I meant here, right, with all these multi-WAN interface and all these things. So let me show you on the Edge platform. So again, same thing, like you go in the Copilot, Cloud Fabric, right? The Cloud Fabric, you have Edge. So once you're creating the zero touch provisioning file, right? At that time, right? Here you select on the platform Equinix, right? You, whatever the site name you need to put, you put the site, right? And see, by default, there's no WAN interface, no LAN. So WAN 0, LAN 0, management 0, right? Okay, I'm adding the WAN interface. So first WAN interface is what? Ether 0, Ether 0, WAN interface. And then you can put interface here and default gateway IP address on it, right? Okay, that is first WAN interface. What is the, if you, and here you see that plus WAN interface type of button here available here, which is not available earlier, right? If you're not selecting Equinix, if you're selecting your own silence, then on the WAN interface, you see that by default, there's always one WAN interface, one LAN interface, one management interface is there, right? It's already there, not 000. And there's no plus WAN interface type of button here, right? If you're not using Equinix. But if you're using Equinix, right? So as I said, by default, all interfaces are showing as 0. So for sure, you need to create the WAN interfaces and management and LAN interfaces. So you first Ether 0. What will be the next interface? If I press plus WAN interface again, will it be Ether 1? No, because in our case, Ether 1 is reserved for LAN interface and Ether 2 is reserved for management interface. So next interface will be Ether 3. So you see that? Next interface is Ether 3. And then, as I mentioned earlier, up to 8 WAN interfaces you can create if you want to create. So I just, now it is like grayed out, right? I cannot do much more here. And how many interfaces are here? So Ether 0, Ether 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? So up to Ether 9. So total 8 WAN interfaces we can create. That's what I was mentioning, like up to 8 we are doing it here. But our recommendation is you should not go more than 4. So Ether 4, Ether 5, that's the maximum you should go, and don't deploy more than that, right? For now. Future releases can be different story, but for now we are recommending up to the 4 management interfaces, right? 4 WAN interfaces, and each WAN interface can connect to the over the private underlay to one of the cloud service provider, right? And then management interface, you need to create one management interface, right? So you see that in the management interface, in the Equinix case, we are not asking you any IP address and subnet mask or whatever default gateway. We are not asking you, right? Because in Equinix case, it is always Equinix assigned, right? So that's why there's no. If you select non-Equinix case, right? So management IP, either DSCP or static, and you need to define it. But in Equinix case, you see that there's nothing, right? So that's the differences with the Equinix case. Okay, now go back here. So up to here, edge capabilities, you know that like we can have only single LAN interface, single management interface, and multiple WAN interfaces. Okay, so this is, I already demo you, right? Using the real Copilot, right? Like how to do the WAN interface. So I don't go to these details. And here we are showing you, right? So in Equinix case, we can have multiple WAN interfaces. Here we are showing the Ether 0, which is connected to the private circuit to Azure. And then the next WAN interface, Ether 3 over the private circuit to AWS, right? And you can have multiple WAN interfaces, right? Okay, now device linking. So in Equinix Network Edge, right? You have multiple VNF function here, right? So you have your Aviatrix Edge device, and you can have other your own devices are there, right? So if you want to do that link of those devices, right? Two virtual natural functions together with that type of connectivity. So there's a device linking table in Equinix available. So you go and add device link, and then you device. So if, for example, for underlay connectivity and all these things, you are using external WAN router, right? You are just using 3 interfaces in Equinix, Ether 0, Ether 1, Ether 2, like same type of deployment you want to use, and all the private underlay or whatever connectivity you want to manage in some external router. Yes, you can do that. You can go and the device link, and then you can do from Ether 0, and you define your, okay, what is the Aviatrix edge, Ether 0, you what is the third-party device router which you already launched, right? Like up and running, what is the interface you want to connect, and that's the connectivity you can do that, right? So all these things you can do it here, and based on the WAN, and it cannot be like not it's not necessary to be router. It can be firewall, SD-WAN device, and anything else. What not you have, like depend on your own deployment model, right? On your own architecture, what you are using in there. So you can do the device linking in Equinix Network Edge. Okay, that topology we are showing you. Here we are showing like multiple WAN interfaces with multiple WAN interfaces, primary path via Equinix private circuit, right? You have that, and you can have high performance encryption on top of it. And same thing, like type of earlier on premise and other type of deployment we are showing you, like your requirement is there that your traffic need to go from one cloud service provider to another cloud service provider over that private circuit, right? So that's what you want to do over the private circuit. You don't want to use internet, but internet you can keep it as a backup, and you can enable the transit, multi-tier transit on Aviatrix Edge, and then your traffic primary path is via private circuits. And if the private circuit is not available, then ACE path prevent other backup path is available here. And then also you can use this private circuit is here, right? But that private circuit doesn't mean that you have encryption on it, right? So that's why you can enable encryption on it. And if you need to full performance, high performance, because these private circuits are more than 1 gig of bandwidth, then you enable insane mode encryption on that, right? High performance encryption on it. Okay. Okay, with that, edge portion is completed. Now we move on to our next agenda item, which is enterprise architecture, right? And we go with some of the common scenario deployment models, all these things, like some of the architectural models here, right? So enterprise architecture one, like we have few use cases. We'll go one by one all for those use cases. So first one is region to region. What we meant by there, right? So you have your cloud deployment. So it is, we are showing first without Aviatrix solution. So you have your cloud environment and using one provider or multiple provider, whatnot. One region is US West, where you have your own cloud environment. Another region you have in US East, where you have your cloud environment, right? And then you have your on-prem location, other things connecting to that cloud environment, right? So your DC West, we are showing that DC West is connecting to US West, and your DC East connecting to US East. And between the cloud environment, you need the connectivity in all these things. You are using, you have your own private MPLS network, which you are using to connect your DC East to DC West. And because this is the private connectivity you have done, here, if you need to go from US West to US East, you are going through your private circuit up to here, you whatever your on-prem location, and from your on-prem location, you are using your MPLS network to go to the DC East, and from DC East to private circuit to your US East cloud deployment model, right? So this is, yeah. So what is happening? Inter-region application experience even latency, because you are going from here to your DC, your own on-prem location, then you're using your MPLS network, which has added some latency there, and then you reach to other your DC type of environment, and then using the private circuit and connect to your US East terminal. Okay, and if you, so latency is issue there, L7 service inspections, all these things. And other thing is organizational boundaries, like this MPLS network and something, and this private connectivity is maybe owned by your network team, and cloud team is responsible for cloud deployment, and all these things is creating more issues, right? Like that hybrid connectivity model, all these things is not efficient. And whatever changes they are making, like cloud environment is changing anything, then network team is not aware of that, and network team is making any changes, then cloud environment is not aware of that. No way. Okay, that's organizational or changes is something like, okay, you have a network team, you are responsible for the network, your cloud team, you are responsible for your cloud deployment. But whatever the changes they are making, like network team cannot see that those changing. Okay, what's change in this type of environment? And same thing, what is the network in changes that happen? The cloud team cannot see that, right? Like all these things not visible to each other. There's no clear communication. All these things, no single pane, right? So, and this is extensive to deploy and maintain, like all these things with private circuit, with MPLS network and all things. And other thing which is quite common here, becoming more common and common. Okay, earlier you don't have that cloud environment, right? Like whatever the US West USA, you have your own DC environment. Your application are running your on-prem DC West, DC East, and all these things. Or you're okay, you heavily dependent on your MPLS network, where you provide the connectivity and all these things, right? Now with the shift of application moving towards the cloud. So most of the application moved here. Most of the application moved here. You have normally the user traffic left from your multiple on-prem location towards your cloud environment. So your like MPLS network traffic is significantly decreased, right? You are not using it more, and it is very highly cost environment to maintain and all these things. So this M plus network is another challenge. And you don't have any analytics, any real-time data, all these things, right? So if there is any type of issue happen or anything, so mean time to repair is always increased, right? So how Aviatrix can help here, right? So eh, you can, you whatever you have already deployed your US best, US East type of environment, all these things are everything. Yeah. What you need to do, right? Yeah, you're not changing anything much here. You just create a cloud backbone, cloud network backbone. So you uh, launch your transit VPC here, transit VPC here, and with transit VPC, you connect your transit gateway each other, and then your transit gateway connect to your on-prem private circuits, right? Your on-prem private circuit, and whatever your natively in environment, whatever the route server, TGW, whatnot, there that transit gateway connect to that. And then you have the inter-cloud connectivity, right? Region to region connectivity, and you have encrypted traffic over the internet, IPsec, right? IPsec, yeah, and you can have high performance encryption, all these things available, right? So with that high performance encrypted cloud backbone, so that eliminates the latency challenges. Now your traffic is going directly from US West to US East. It's not going through the private circuits and then MPLS network and another private circuit to go to from one region to another region, right? And you have whole traffic engineering, everything available to you. You have all the tools available to you. You can debug, troubleshoot all these things. A single pane of glass you have. You can do flow monitoring, all these things you have. And this private WAN circuit usage is significantly decreased, right? Earlier, you are using that private circuit to go from one region to another region, right? From US West to US East, or US East to US West also, in addition to whatever your enterprise DC traffic up to the cloud, right? In addition of that. But now that private circuit usage is not from your region to region traffic is not using those private circuits. So reduce of private WAN circuit usage, right? And uh, and you are using some other private tools or other thing, you are involving developers or all these things for all the visibility, all these things, you don't need to do that. Like all the visibility and control you have there using the transit gateways, right? So transit gateway has a full control, a full visibility you have, and you have all the troubleshooting tools available to you, right? So all these things. So advantage you got it, like all these advantage you way, and it is simpler deployment model. So here we are showing you how to deploy that. So this is your existing environment, right? Your multiple services, VPCs, connect to your native whatever the environment is, TGW if in case of AWS or out server, in case of Azure or whatnot, right? Whatever the cloud environment you have, right? And then you have private circuit and you have your MPLS network. So this is your existing environment, right? So what you do first thing, you need to launch and Aviatrix controller and Copilot. So in any of the cloud, one of the cloud provider, you go and launch your Aviatrix controller and Copilot. Okay, you did it, right? So just launching the Copilot and controller doesn't change anything. Your existing environment is running as is, right? Then you go and create the transit VPCs here in this environment in US West region and US East region. Also, nothing changing. Whatever your existing environment, you know, up to that point, there's no change. You just create your Aviatrix transit gateways, right? Your all the flows, everything is exactly the same as before. And if you need to do the centrally inspect that traffic, right, layer 7 up to layer 7 inspection or whatnot, right, you need to do, you launch your next gen firewall using and connect to the transit gateways, all these FireNet policies, right? And then you deploy your cloud backbone, right? So still nothing changed. You just did it like your FireNet, all these things, and you do the transit to transit peering. Up till this point, none of the traffic is going through this transit network. It is still using your old method, right? Old way of deployment. Now, what you need to do once your this backbone is up and running, right? Like everything is up and running here, right? You connect your native transit construct to the cloud backbone. So whatever your TGW, vault servers, all these things, right? Yeah, that you connect to your transit gateways. Here you connect to your transit gateways. Once you connect to the transit gateways, region to region traffic, yeah, right? US West to US East, US East to US is using this backbone, and that private circuit is stop using their private circuit, right? And also, next step, you connect your private circuit termination instead of the transit gateways and all these, you will do the private circuit from the native construct to the cloud backbone. Whatever the transit gateway you have, you terminate it here, and that's you are done, right? So you are not using the full solution of Aviatrix, right? Yeah, in this architecture, you are just using your whatever the existing deployment you have done, your brownfield deployment, and but it reduce your all your pain points, right? And if you reduce, it's a cost-effective method as well, right? You're not using private circuit for communication, all these things. You'll reduce your MPLS network usage, all these things. You are doing it here.